Hello, I'm going to show you what you need to know to be successful in completing the two exercises, the two assignments in Module 5. So the first one, die outcomes using multiplication. Let me point out here, this first paragraph is telling you about things that you've already done, and in the discussion assignment, you use the expand grid function. Don't let that confuse you. You do not need to use the expand grid function for this assignment. You used it before, so now you're supposed to know this stuff. In this activity, you will investigate the outcomes of rolling two four-sided die. It should be dice, it's plural when there's two of them. But instead of adding the two values to obtain their sum, you're going to multiply the two values to obtain their product. This sounds complicated, but it's really easy, and I'll show you why. Let's go to R, and here's some code for exercise 5.3. This code is straight out of Chapter 1 in your textbook. I have not done anything. I have gone to the textbook, looked at the code, typed it in. You could do the same thing. It's actually the function is in one place and the replication is in another place and the plotting is in another place, so you might have to piece it together. But just to save you the frustration, and inevitably, especially people who are new to R programming, there will be typos, and those typos are hard to track down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to attach it to the announcement. The same announcement where you got the link for this video is going to have this file. Make it really easy for you. Now, this function, you will see, takes six-sided die and does a sample of size 2 and then takes the sum. This, again, this is straight out of the textbook, right? So if I run this whole thing, and then here's the plot. You can find the picture of that plot in Chapter 1 of your textbook. That's it. So all you need to do is make a couple of changes, right? The first change is, instead of six-sided dice, you want four-sided dice. That's just as easy as changing this 6 to a 4. Easy peasy. Then where it gets a little more complicated is here we have the sum of the dice. We want the product of the dice. There are two ways you can take a product. So dice here is a vector with two elements in it. Let me go create a vector with two elements in it down here. I'm going to create another one. I'm just going to call it D. And D takes, let's put in a 2 and a 4. Okay, now you can see up here in our environment, I got a 2 and a 4. Notice this appeared when I ran this line of code. Also notice dice does not appear and die does not appear. We ran all of this code. We'll run it again. These things don't show up over here. These variables only exist inside of this function, right? The function shows up over here, but the variables created inside the function don't exist outside of the function. That's an important point. Anyway, so I created another two-element vector called D, which is equivalent to dice up here, right? We took a sample of die, size equals 2. So if I did that and assigned it to dice, then dice is a vector with 2 elements. Just like here, D is a vector with 2 elements. Those elements are 2 and 4. To multiply these together, you need to be able to access the individual elements in a vector. How do you do that? Well, you do that by putting it in a bracket, right? So D bracket 1 is going to be the first element of that vector. It's the 2. And D bracket 2 is the second element of the vector. So if I want to multiply them, I can say D bracket 1 times D bracket 2, and it gives me back 8. So up here, you can change this sum of dice to dice bracket 1 times dice bracket 2. That'll give you the product. There's another way you can do it, but because here it says, where did it say this? I saw it somewhere. Modify, multiply, use your new function, replicate. I thought I saw something in here that said you should. Oh, well. Anyway, here it is. This big box that's right in front of me that I couldn't find. Notice the sample function returns a vector consisting of multiple values. Research how you may access the individual values of an R vector. So that's what I just showed you. There's another way to do this. There's an equivalent of the sum function that returns the product instead of the sum. If you want to research that, you can use that, or you can just do what I just showed you. Now, the other thing that the assignment says, and this is new, and there's a really good video in Canvas that shows you what I'm about to show you, probably does it better. The video is Roger Ping, who was actually the person that I learned R programming from the first time I started doing programming. And it's a really good video that shows you how to create an R Markdown document. But I'm going to show you very briefly here because the assignment says, document your code and the histogram in an HTML R Markdown document and submit the HTML file for this assignment. I'm going to be really picky about this assignment. If you send me the R Markdown file or an R script, I am not going to grade it. It says submit the HTML file. I want you to submit an HTML file. Will not accept anything else. So how do we create this HTML file using R Markdown? I'm going to show you. This is really simple. I'm going to take this code and put it in an R Markdown document. Right? So first thing I'm going to do is go up here to my little green plus sign. And this time from the drop down, instead of creating an R script, I'm going to create a new R Markdown document. And this window pops up. Put your name in for author. Give it a title that means something. I'm going to use exercise. Actually, not exercise. I'm going to use assignment 5.3. You want your output format to be HTML. You can do PDFs, but you have to add a bunch of other software. You can do Word if you have Word installed on your computer and R can find it. But for now, we want HTML. I want HTML output, so that's the box that should be checked. And there's two choices here. I can create an empty document, or I can say OK. Well, if I click OK, it doesn't give me an empty document. It gives me the skeleton of a document with some sample code in it, right? And that's kind of handy because if I go in here and I click on knit, it's going to ask me to give this a name. And again, I'm going to use the same name that I used in the title. I'm going to call it Assignment 5.3.rmd. The .rmd is very important. If you use any other extension on this file, the next step will not work. So we're going to save the file, call it whatever you want, but the last 4 characters need to be period RMD. Stands for R Markdown. So I'm going to save that. Yes, I do want to replace it. And you're going to see a bunch of stuff happening in the console and in the terminal. And then this thing is going to open up. Now, this is not the one we ultimately want to do. This is the sample file. Don't turn this in. This is the sample that Rstudio creates if you don't do anything else. So what we want to do, and you'll notice, all right, let me just, can I bring that back up again? Okay. Anyway, so we have some different elements here. We have these 3 backticks and then R, and that introduces a code block. And then the code block ends with 3 more backticks. Then we have, the 2 hash marks and then text creates a heading within your document. And then this is just plain old text. And then we have another code chunk. So we want to delete all of this. And remember, the assignment said, let me read it again so I can quote it directly. Document your code and the histogram. So that means I don't want you to just show me the code and the results. I want you to tell me about it, right? Provide some documentation. So here in R, I'm going to start out with a header that says setup. Now, this part is very free-flowing. What I'm doing is how I would do it. You can do it differently. But I just want some text that explains the document. I'm going to do it fairly complicated. You can do it much simpler if you want to. You can put all of your code in one code chunk. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to say first, we need to load the ggplot2 library. And then I'm going to 3 backticks, the letter R inside curly braces. And then I'm going to go back to exercise 5.3, and I'm going to take the actual code that I want to run, copy. I'll put it in this code block, paste, and then 3 backticks to end that code block. Then I'm going to say, put a new header in there, function. Next, we create our function. Again, 3 backticks, the letter R in curly braces, and then my code. So creating the function, that's going to be this part of the code. Copy, paste, 3 backticks, and then the results. So roll the dice 10,000 times and plot a histogram of the results. You should know what happens next by now. Backtick, 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 R. Go back to my exercise, copy this, paste it here. Backtick, backtick, backtick. The end. Okay. Now, this knit button is what's going to turn this into an HTML document. So if I click knit, and we watch all of this stuff run, and then we see our results. So, well, my computer's acting up, but there we go. So that's it. Except, of course, this function is still doing the sum of 6-sided dice, and you need to change it to do the product of 4-sided dice, and there's, of course, it's going to make the plot look different. Then I can close that. Now, what did I create? I created assignment. I called it assignment this time, didn't I? Assignment 5.3.html. There's the file. Right? So, if I go find this in my computer, let's go see where I am. Go to Documents. Yours may be, go to R. And there it is, assignment 5.3.html. That's the file that you are going to submit. And for most of you, this is going to be, actually, even here, that was for an earlier part. So if you don't tell R that you want to create this in a subdirectory, it's going to put it in your Documents directory. So there it is in my Documents directory, assignment 5.3.html. That's an HTML file, right? I can click on that. It's going to open in Chrome because Chrome is my default browser. You see Chrome flashing down here. There it is, open in Chrome. That's the file that you are going to submit, is the HTML document. So that's 5.3. Now let's go look at 5.4. This one is really complicated, except it's not, right? At the end of Chapter 7, it says, code the completed slot machine program from your textbook and play the slot machine 3 times. Submit your code and the results of playing the game 3 times in an HTML or Markdown document. So again, this is a case where if you go look in Chapter 7, the whole program is there. You just have to copy it. You don't have to create anything. And again, because there are issues every time with typos that people have trouble with, just to make it simpler for you and for me, I am going to provide you with this code. Now let me walk through the code, and let me tell you this, there are 2 kinds of students in this class, right? I know that probably most of you, this class is fulfilling a requirement. You don't plan to ever use R again after you leave this class, and you just want to get a passing grade. Fine. Take this code, use it, be happy. There are others among you who really want to learn R and probably will use it again at some point. So if you're one of those people, I urge you to go through the Chapter 7 in the Groliman textbook, read the whole chapter, look at this code, make sure you understand what's happening on every line of this code, and then, of course, you can use it. But ultimately, the assignment is take this code, put it inside of an R Markdown document, run it, and then submit the HTML file that's created. So copying the code into an R Markdown document is the same as the other one. But let me just walk through it real quick. So the first thing, this is a slot machine, right? And I'm going to start at the end with what happens. So we've created a function called play. That's this. And you can see what happens when you run the play function. It creates something called symbols using a Git Symbols function. Then it prints the symbols, and then it scores the symbols. All right. So where are these other functions? Well, we start up here with Git Symbols. So this gives us the wheels, right? So these are the wheels of the slot machine. They've got a double D, a 7, a triple B, a 2B, a 1B. Those are bars. Cherries, the double D is diamonds, and a 0. And then these are the probabilities, right? The double D is going to come up 3% of the time. 7 is going to come up 3% of the time. 6 is, BBB is going to come up 6% of the time. BB 10% of the time, B 25% of the time, C 1% of the time, and 0 52% of the time. So those are the probabilities for these values, and then we're sampling the wheel. Size equals 3, so we're coming up with 3 wheels. We got 3 wheels on our slot machine. And then there's this complicated function that scores the result. So this is a function that takes symbols as an input. And then it checks to see if all 3 wheels are the same. It checks to see if you have bars. If they're the same, then it gives you the payouts. If you have 3 double Ds, you get back 100, blah, blah, blah. Else, if it's all bars, then the prize is 5. Else, if it's cherries, then you get a bunch. There's an adjustment for diamonds. The prize is doubled if you have a diamond. Right? And then the play function combines all of those. So if I take this and I run it, nothing happens. Right? I have just created 3 functions. So to play the machine, I can go down here and say play. That's a function. I'm going to run the play function. And I got back 3 zeros and it paid out 0. And I can do it again. Excuse me. I got 2 bars and a 0, so it doesn't pay out anything. Keep doing it. I got a bar, a 7, and a 0. 3 zeros. Eventually it's going to give me something. Come on. I think this machine is even tighter than most of the machines in Vegas. It doesn't pay out. But there we go. 3 bars. I got back $5. Of course, I spent way more than $5 before I got there. But anyway, so you're going to again, copy this code into an R Markdown document, and then in your R Markdown document, you're going to have play, 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 because it said to show the results of playing the game 3 times. And that's it. You just put that in an R Markdown document, click the knit button, send me the HTML file. So those are the 2 assignments for Chapter 5. And again, this code is going to be attached to the announcement, as is the 5.3 code. This code doesn't need to be altered. You just need to put it into an R Markdown document, knit it, play it. The 5.3 code, again, remember you have to change it to do the product of 4-sided dice instead of the sum of 6-sided dice. And that's it. Hopefully everybody will have an easier time on this assignment. I've done everything but give you the answers. So you should be able to get this. Right. Oh, one more thing I wanted to go over. You can stop here if you are using RStudio on your own computer. I have a couple of students who have work computers and they can't install software on them, and so they are using RStudio online, right, which you can do. It's called Rstudio Cloud, and you can set up a free account on Rstudio Cloud, and everything that you can do in RStudio on your personal computer you can do on a web browser, basically. So what I wanted to show you is, if you created an R Markdown document and knitted it on Rstudio Cloud, over here in the file list you can see there's the HTML file. But how do you get that out of the cloud and onto your computer so you can submit it with your assignment? Well, you click the little checkbox, you go over here where it says More, and you click Export. And it says, this file is going to be downloaded to your computer, give it a name. I've done this before, so the name's already there. Click Download, and then it shows up down here. It gets downloaded to your, well, if your system's set up like mine, which I think most are, it gets downloaded to your Downloads folder. And then from there you can submit it. So that's it. Have a good week. Email me or message me if you have any questions. Have a good night. How do I stop the recording?